Well, hello again, and welcome to this Saturday edition of Stories of My Life. Stories of My Life is actually an extension of our broadcast on God's answers for anxiety and depression. I'm Pastor Ray Barnett. Glad that you can be with me here today, and I want to wish everyone a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Now, I just want to alert you that there's a strong wind blowing, and I think what's going on here is there's a storm passing down here to the south. I don't think it's going to affect us. At least it's not going to affect me. But you may hear a lot of rustling in the background. That's going to somewhat affect the audio, but I did give it a test, and I don't think it should be too bad. And if it is, it's more practice on your patience. All right, that's why I'm wearing a hat as well. As little hair as I have up on top, I do have some hair, and it's blowing around quite a bit. Would become a distraction, or then again, maybe not, because after all, this is the stories of my life. I thought today to tell you a little anecdote that seemed to kind of fit well into the pattern of teachings that we have had this week, mostly emphasizing practicing the techniques and principles that you are learning. And by the way, the comments that you guys leave is very, very helpful to me. Remember, I told you once that preaching, particularly preaching, is a lot like bowling with a blanket over the pins, and it really is. You throw the ball down, well, let's say the center of the lane. You hear this big crash. You know the pins have fallen, but you don't know if you got a strike. You don't know if you got a 7-10 split. You really don't know what you have. And in the ordinary sense of preaching and how it goes, I mean, you don't get much feedback from people. I've been on radio for 33 years, and we only get an occasional letter. However, many times when I'm out in public, people ordinarily don't know what I look like, but we have a pretty large listening audience on the radio. And I may be speaking, I don't mean preaching, I mean just in a store or someplace. And I've had people say to me, "Boy, that voice sounds familiar." And I said, "Well, I don't know." And I tell them about the radio broadcast, who I am, and many people have told me over the years how they listen every day and what have you. But my point is that if it wasn't for that chance meeting in a store, once it happened in a piano store, it's happened to me at the gym, other places, I wouldn't know, who appreciates the broadcast. So your comments when you write something into me is very helpful, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that many of you are writing to me saying how much these broadcasts are helping you. Well, all right, I hope that today's stories of my life is helpful to you. I also hope that the strong wind that's blowing doesn't interfere too much. Hey, by the way, the spot where I'm perched right now, if you look behind me, and this is my left shoulder, you'll see the canal or the aqueduct that was originally, well, it wasn't the original one, but it was one that was built in the 1800s. So I'm not too far from it, perched up here precariously, about 30 feet from the water, and I'm right on the edge here. So that's that. So I want to tell you about the story. Like I said, it's a small anecdote But it does fit for the theme of practice. Especially, you get results from what you concentrate on. Remember we talked about that this week? You know, if you're yesterday I was telling you, if we concentrate on what is good, then, you know, our mind is focused on that and has a tendency to dwell on the goodness of God. If we focus on our symptoms, then of course we're going to be worked up, and we're going to, and more than likely, and it's usually the case, average case, is to work ourselves up over the symptoms and how distressing they are. But keep this in mind, I want to say this now. But keep this in mind that symptoms will run their course, meaning they'll kind of expend themselves if you don't give them anything to feed on, which is that thought of danger that I talk so frequently about, because it's probably the most important point of all these teachings. Get the thought of danger and associating danger with your symptoms out of the mind. Won't be easy, like I say, but it's got to be done. All right. Well, here's a story. Years ago, and I think I've mentioned to you, my family, we have a habit, at least when my kids were around. And I grew up with my family, my mom and my dad, my brother, other members of my family. We would all go down to the Jersey Shore for our vacation every year. So I've been going down there for 60 years. About that. A long time. And this year is an exception. You know, I won't get to go. We won't get to go. But ordinarily, I love to go back, and it's the exact same spot where we went when I was a kid. My family went, and then my family, they all grew up there too. So I wanted to create that type of tradition that has always brought back very pleasant memories to me. I mean, many families have a tradition of going to, well, right up here, a lot of people go to Lake George every year, or they go someplace else. Anyway, we went on a 2-week vacation, 20 plus years ago, probably about 25 years ago. Now, I just want to make this clear. You know, years ago I had more hair on the top of my head than I have at the moment, and I don't expect it's going to get any better as I get older. And when we came home from vacation, which is usually the case, you know, we take food with us because we stay in a cottage. And, you know, my wife has always been good about still doing the cooking, at least the supper anyway. And so we take food with us, and then we use up all that food. And there's been many times, the majority of times, that when we come back, we don't have food with us, and there's not much food in the house. So most times I'll just suggest, let's just go out to eat. All right, we're still on vacation. The night we come back, and that's always a Saturday night, and Sunday morning I got to go right back to the pulpit and preach. So this one time we went out to get something to eat, and I guess maybe I was in a little bit of a hurry because I still have to get back and prepare something for the pulpit. Anyway, back when I had more hair than I have today, and I'm not bald, but I'm pretty close to it, and I had more of a full head of hair, you know, I don't remember if I took a quick shower, I don't recall, but I know that I was trying to hurry things up and got out my hairspray and got out my underarm right guard aerosol. And, you know, I just got cleaned up, didn't have a beard back then, you know, just cleaned myself up, combed my hair, put the spray on, under my arms, throw a t-shirt or a golf shirt or whatever, and we all went out to eat. And oddly enough, it was a windy night, just like today is. I mean, it's odd that today's windy. It was windy that night. And, you know, I'm wondering why, as we're getting out of the car, my hair's blowing all over the place, you know? I mean, I don't glue it on, but I mean, I put a sufficient amount on to keep it in place. That's the idea of hairspray, right? And I'm wondering why my hair is just blowing all over the place, you know? And my arms, you know, they were just perfect. My armpits, just perfect. And then it occurred to me, I didn't put hairspray on my head. I put Right Guard deodorant. And I then took the hairspray and put it under my arms. I think I explained it to my wife and said that even though my hair is blowing around, at least I know it's not going to sweat and put off an odor, and the hairs underneath my arms are going to stay in place tonight. Well, that's what happens when you're in a hurry and you're rushing through things and paying attention. In this case, I should say, not paying attention to what you're doing. And then there's always a price to pay. For that night, it was just, my hair was blowing all over the place, but my armpits stuck together just right. Okay, so not much of a foul, no harm. I can guarantee it wasn't something I ever repeated, right? Next time I always make sure, this is the hairspray, this is the underarm deodorant, and it's been paradise ever since. Well, it's a little anecdote, a little story of a faux pas, a public blunder, which didn't hurt anybody, including me, and we had a little bit of a laugh about it. But you know, one thing that I've been able to do, and I thank God, is to always find there's an analogy to either my personal life or the people that I teach, which again extends to you, it extends to the fairly large listening audience we have on radio. And obviously the people that are sitting in front of me week after week, some of them have been there for over 30 years. We've been together a long time. But I've always been able to look at something and say, well, this is like that. And honestly, as I've told you before, these broadcasts that I do are ad hoc, meaning I don't do much preparation for them because I'm going by years of experience. And I think, though, I'm going to have to start jotting some ideas down that are coming to me when I'm not here with you. That would be good topics to cover. But still, I prefer to have it outlined in my head and then just speak, because you know, the most effective type of speech, preaching and teaching, is when you really know your subject and you can speak this way rather than looking at notes, because it comes out stiff. And anyway, I don't do a lot of preparation for these teachings. I just pray, and then I think to myself, well, like this past week, you know, I really got to emphasize to you watching that you need to practice these principles, and we went over that earlier in the week, and part of last week I talked about muscles, how they re-educate the brain. That's how I do it. But anyway, I've always been able to say, hey, this is like that, to take illustrations from music, to take illustrations from anatomy, physiology, other things, and say, well, this is like the spiritual life, you know? And so here, my little story of putting deodorant in my hair and underarm, Right Guard. I put Right Guard in my hair, and I put whatever I was using at the time, hairspray under my arms. It has somewhat to do with the fact that obviously I wasn't paying attention, and the way it relates to nervous symptoms, in my view, is the fact that you are often paying attention to the wrong thing, which means you're not paying attention. On a breezy day, which is probably affecting the audio, what would you expect but Amtrak to decide to schedule a trip right behind me? Never fails. So in my little story, I put two things where they didn't belong, though I had the right ingredients. I mean, I had the right things. It wasn't like I had, I don't know, gunk to put in your car for your motor. I mean, I had hairspray for my hair and I had deodorant for my underarms. I just wasn't paying attention and I mixed them up. Well, when you mix things up like that, it doesn't work well, does it? Didn't for me. And it won't for you either. If you are, and there's a number of analogies I can make. You're not going to get deliverance from your symptoms if, number one, you're paying attention to the wrong things. The way to get deliverance from anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and even depression is not to give it more power than it actually has. In other words, symptoms, when they come, and in your case they come frequently, and they gain strength by you putting, let me say with respect to my illustration, my anecdote, if you're going to put hairspray, if you're going to put deodorant on your hair, it's not going to help. If you're not going to practice, I mean, you could be here all day long with Right Guard and putting it on your hair, both men and women, not going to hold it in place, and you're going to wonder why. I got the right ingredients. Yeah, you got the right ingredients, but you didn't put them in the right place. If you don't detach the idea of danger from the brain, the motionless sitting that I've talked about for helping as a technique to stop a panic attack, as well as preventing one in practicing before the attack actually happens. If you don't detach danger from the brain as the first step, that practice is not going to be very effective. I mean, I guess maybe, I don't know what they put in Right Guard, but maybe it has a little bit of adhesive in it. I don't know. I just know that night my hair was blowing all over the place because, let's face it, underarm deodorant is not designed for the head, and the other as well. Unless you really want to keep the hairs under your arms nice and straight, go for it, but it don't work. It don't work out. And if you don't first say, I must detach danger from my brain, yet you're trying to practice a principle, but you're not detaching danger from the brain, you got everything mixed up, and it won't work. You know what? There's got to be one or two of you out there that, for whatever reason, you hung in with these teachings, yet you say, I'm not getting good results, that's why I don't make a comment, Pastor Ray. Well, I'm going to tell you that you're not getting a result because you're switching things up. Well, that, of course, and then, if I took my little story a little further, maybe you got a whole lot of hair and you need a little more hairspray. I don't know. Could be. But if you mix them up, it don't work. Even though you have the right ingredients, they're in the wrong place. Danger must be detached from the brain, that you're not in any danger, even though your symptoms are distressing. Now, there's no question that symptoms, nervous symptoms, are distressing, but they are not dangerous to your mental health or to your physical health. That's number one. Number two, as I mentioned last week in this little story here, hopefully it'll create a memory aid for you. Listening to this channel, or for that matter any other channel that deals with anxiety and symptoms of panic and nervous disorders, not going to help you if you don't practice. So let's say, going back to my story, to bridge it over into the realm of nervous symptoms, just because you have the right ingredients on the table and you have a head knowledge, head knowledge is not going to help you. It's doing it, practicing. By the way, the same is true of Christianity, of following Christ. Reading the Bible will not help you if you don't do what Jesus said to do. Now me, I've got to apply quite a few things because I'm not only a Christian, but I'm a Christian leader. So if I don't apply the principles that apply to me as a Christian leader, pastor, and then as a husband, and then as a father, and then as just the average Christian, it don't work. Don't matter if I could quote it by chapter and verse. It only works when those chapters and verses are actually practiced. So that's the second thing. Detaching danger. If you already got the concept, you must do it by having a resolute will that says, I will not give in to this thought that I'm in danger mentally or physically. Number two, that in itself is practice. Now the motionless sitting, the getting up and really forcing yourself to take a walk against the depression, or making the date with family and friends and so on, to go out to a dinner or whatever, a picnic. I just had a wonderful, if I had known it was going to happen, I would have videotaped it for you as the start of the show. They had a little antique car show over here, all 1930 Model T Ford and stuff like that. And right before I started the show, you know, they came. I didn't know they were going to come past. I would have recorded it. It was nice. Anyway, you know, it's going to be in the practice. It's going to be in the taking of the walk and the making of the thing against your feelings, against the depression, against the constant negativity, against there's no hope for me. You don't want to sink into that. I mean, I don't mean to laugh. I'm laughing at my story. What if after I put deodorant in my head and hairspray into my arms, I said, there's no hope for me. I'm losing my mind, you know. That was 25 years ago, I think, and now at this point, I might actually start have a case that I'm losing my mind. I don't know. But you're not going to be helped, really at all, unless you actually put into practice what these lessons here on this channel, what I'm giving to you in these lessons. You have to do it. So to finish, here we have the right ingredients to go out to dinner: hairspray and deodorant. But I messed up. My hair was out of place and my underarms were beautiful. And that's how you want your life to turn out, but you don't want to be mixing things up, otherwise it's not going to be so beautiful. You want to be able to do things as God's word instructs you. Now, one more thing. I made note of this past week, but I want to make note of it again today too. You notice that I'm not always quoting a lot of scripture verses. That doesn't mean that there's not verses to back up what I'm saying. It's just that I'm trying to keep these teachings exceptionally simple, so that the practice so the concept is easier understood. If I start to make it a sermon, well, then I might as well just save it for the Time for Truth channel, the other channel that we have with my sermons, where that's what I do. They're an hour long, always an hour long, and I go into more detail and use the scriptures a lot. But I'm just throwing that in because this is God's answers for anxiety and depression, and it's not so much look at, I'm in a t-shirt. I will have a shirt and tie on tomorrow in the pulpit. I'm trying to trying to create and make these teachings a more casual, as if we were sitting together here at the Schoharie River, as if we were sitting together, which of course we're not. I'm trying to make things simple for you, and I just wanted to alert you to that. Okay, so to finish and to conclude, make sure you have the right ingredient in the right place. Detach danger from your brain. Practice the principles and lessons that you're being taught, and stay with me for these broadcasts, because Lord willing, I'll keep them up. I'll keep them up. And if I do, it's going to be a couple of years worth of teachings. And that's what it's going to take to give you a full knowledge. It took me a lifetime to give you a full knowledge of what you're up against and how you can defeat it. You're going to have to stick with me. And I thank God that we're picking up subscribers almost every day now. So that's good. Good sign. All right. Let me pray for you. Father, once again, just touch all my friends that are watching. Help them to put the right teaching in the right place. And as I emphasized and accented last week, help them to do it. I'll give them peace today and serenity and deliverance from their oppressions and depressions. I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, now look at tomorrow. I'll be in the pulpit tomorrow, Sunday. And you can find my messages, encouraging words for discouraging days, over on our second YouTube channel, which is done in our sanctuary, and I'm at the pulpit. Encouraging words for discouraging days. You find it on the Time for Truth Ministries. Also has my name on it. So, tune in, be with us. Subscribe to the channel if you want to stick with these lessons. They're going to take time. And make sure you hit the notification button as well. Okay, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow on the Time for Truth Ministries with my message. And if not, and God willing, then I'll see you on Monday back here on God's Answers for Anxiety and Depression. God bless you. See you then.